Yeah, just full circulation. Go back quiet, didn't
Good afternoon, everyone. Call today's meeting of the Roanoke Valley-Alleghany Regional Commission to order. And before we do the roll today, Mr. Chuck Unroe, representing Clifton Forge, has requested to participate remotely in today's meeting of the commission under the commission's policy for electronic meeting participation, allowing for remote participation for emergency, personal, or medical matters in a physical form as present. Unless there is an objection, we will consider this request approved by unanimous consent. Any objections? I hear none. So therefore, welcome, Mr. Unroe. I assume you're out there.
Don't think we, it's not on just yet, but I know he's had please one meeting to another.
So yes, we'll call the roll today, and we'll do that just by going around the room via introduction. So I'm Jim Wallace from the city of Salem.
Lori Smith, Franklin County.
Bill North, Roanoke County.
David Radford, Roanoke County.
Robert Wood, Town of Rocky Mount.
Dean Martin, Roanoke County.
Cody Sexton, Town of Benton.
Peter Ballison, City of Roanoke.
Brad Gross, Town of Benton.
P. Osborne, Roanoke County.
Debbie Lodmer, Clifford Forge.
Hunter Holiday, City of Salem. Steve Clinton, Botetourt County.
Steve Sandy, Franklin County, sitting in for Chris Whitley.
Amy White, Botetourt County.
Billy Martin, Citizens Rep, beautiful Botetourt County.
Beautiful Botetourt County.
Mark Stanton, Regional Commission.
Elizabeth Elmore, Regional Commissioner.
It says Virginia.
I know, I'm pretending to be Virginia.
Right there. Scholar Jenny.
Who's in there behind? Oh,
Oh, Sherry Dean, Regional Commissioner.
Brian Hill, Regional Commission.
thank you. You know that?
Yes, and we have a form.
All right. So I guess I want to take a moment to remind our Appalachian Regional consent agenda. So we have to do the approval of the consent agenda, which consists of the approval of the agenda for today, the minutes from the last meeting, financial report, the audit engagement letter. All those materials may be found in your information packet for today. So can we have an approval of the consent agenda?
Second.
Second, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Thank you. That motion carries. So now we can go back to the remarks today. And we'll take a moment to remind our Appalachian Regional Commission communities to take advantage of the READY LDD grant writing bench program, which provides free access to professional grant writers through a funding opportunity through the ARC's READY LDD program. This grant allows communities and partners to request assistance on a range of federal and other opportunities. Approval from our member localities, partners can include school systems, community colleges, nonprofits, Chamber of Commerce, and others. Please reach out to Mr. Holmes or visit the READY LDD page via the grant resources section of the commission's website. I also want to remind commissioners that the legislative committee is currently undertaking a review of our legislative agenda. And we encourage you to send any changes or updates to committee chair Bill North or secretary Jeremy Holmes as soon as possible. The committee hopes to finalize the updated agenda and deliver it before the start of the General Assembly session this year. And lastly, the July commission meeting will be canceled as usual to allow for a well-earned summer break for all of our commissioners. Please watch for the official cancellation in the coming weeks. And please enjoy a little time off the next month. That concludes my remarks. So now I'll turn it over to Mr. Holmes for the executive director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two just quick short items. Want to notify the board of an upcoming change in Virginia's open meeting laws. The biggest effect on us is that while we will still be allowed to offer Zoom meetings, Zoom participants must keep their cameras on at all times. If the camera goes off, you are considered absent from the meeting. So that this past session takes place effective July 1. I think that something along those lines is we will be incorporating into the update of our remote meeting policy for both the commission and the TPO effective next month. There are some other minor changes that don't really have an impact on the commission or for the TPO. And the other item also just want to take a moment to congratulate Franklin County and Rocky Mount for receiving 2 of only 3 raise grant awards in the state of Virginia. So these represent that line of funding that goes back to the old Tiger grants from the kind of Obama administration, and our region hasn't received funding or much funding under that program in quite a while. It's a total of $2.6 million for 2 planning projects on Route 40 and a shared project with Franklin and Bedford. I'd be happy if any of the Franklin County folks want to talk a little bit about those projects, but it's great to have landed 2 of those in our region out of 3 in the state. So I want to congratulate those localities. I should also note selfishly, our staff, Member John Stanton did assist Rocky Mount on one of those grants. And I say that part so you know you can tap into the resources if you needed further assistance. That's one of the things that we can provide. So I'm not sure if Maureen, Robert, or Steve, if you want to talk about those at all, but otherwise, good work. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll defer to Mr. Sandy. He and his staff were instrumental in writing this raise grant. Not only last year, but we resubmitted this year and was a successful recipient. Mr. Sandy?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Smith. For us, this is a 24-mile corridor study, really of 122. So roughly 12 miles on one side of the bridge and 12 miles on the other side of the bridge, part Bedford County, part Franklin. So for us, it was really a regional effort between the 2 counties, but also 2 different PDCs. So West Piedmont, who we're also a member of, and then Central Virginia, is that what they're still called?
Yes.
Central Virginia PDC was also part of that group as well. And so I don't think we have any VDOT folks here today, but I think for us, I think the difference between the 2 applications, I think, was this time we were able to get some support from VDOT, from the commissioner, and from the secretary's office. And so I think that maybe put us over the top, maybe for both projects to help us get there. So we do appreciate that support that we got from them as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sandy. Appreciate the information. See, next item on our agenda is consideration of executive committee approval of our legislative agenda, and I'll ask Mr. North to comment on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're in the process now asking the chief administrative officers, as well as I think Jeremy sent an email out to everyone who's a member of the commission here in this room and those that aren't here today, to ask for your input, suggestions for items for the legislative agenda for next year. And the reason we're moving this up in advance is listening to our legislators. They want these items before them beginning in August and September, so they can start working on bills that might come from some of our suggestions. And the sooner they have that information, the better. Waiting till November or December like last year is problematic because many times they've already submitted bills. And for the short session, they may be limited to 7 bills. And so if you show up too late, you know, you're out of luck. Or if they can do something for this region, they'd like to know about it in advance. So last year's agenda, we had 5 items on there, and they dealt with the economic development, transportation issues, school construction, maintenance, airport investment, and Catawba Hospital revitalization. So if there's something not in those categories that you wish to tell us about, please get something in, because we're meeting July the 2nd at 2 o'clock, either virtually or in this room, depending on members that are made up of the committee. Jim Wallace, Lori Smith, myself, I think Mayor Gross.
Wallace,
Mr. Wallace, right. And so that is the executive committee as designated by the commission. Now, the executive committee shall have the authority to act on behalf of the commission as authorized by the commission, provided that such powers given to the executive committee are not inconsistent with provisions of the Virginia Regional Cooperation Act. And so with that said, by voice vote, we'd like to recommend that you all entrust us with the executive committee of setting the agenda and advising you what that agenda is, but we need to move forward with this starting July 2nd. We'll start with the agenda from last year and see what stays and what gets added. So don't be shy to give us your suggestions, because if you don't, well, we'll never know whether you had any input, not put simply. So I think, Steve, you served on it last year for our first one, and the name of the game is to have one and to get it in the hands of members that serve this area. Will Davis in Franklin County, all the way folks over in Clifton Forge and represent that area. Terry Austin is here earlier. Any more value you want to add to that conversation?
The only thing I would add is the hope here is that because we are under more time constraints, last year we developed a legislative agenda largely after or current with localities generating your own, and what we're trying to do is kind of fill in the gaps. The feedback that we've got in the regional legislative agenda, as Mr. Hart said, should really come out pretty far in advance of the General Assembly. Because the commission tends not to meet in July and August due to schedules, we wanted to expedite the process by asking you to grant the executive committee authority, so it's easier to get that smaller group together than to try to get the whole board together to approve it. We'll of course communicate that and bring the agenda back on the board does meet in full, but this is just to expedite that process to get out ideally by the end of July. I will note, as Mr. Moore said, we have put out a call for feedback. We haven't received any significant feedback from your chief administrative officers or others at this point. And if you were at the TPO earlier, you heard Delegate Austin note that some of these items that we had last year still continue to need our help and support for the coming year. So we haven't received any additional input to change the agenda as it currently exists. So I hope that helps me.
And one of the suggestions that came out of the meeting with Delegate Austin, the Transportation Planning Organization, was encouraging us to consider writing a letter from the region. And Tori Williams and I talked about adding some companies on there as well as other state delegates, see if they would agree to sign this letter. And the letter would be to the governor advocating support of funding for the runway extension when the time comes, the regional airport. And that may be a ways off, but nevertheless, we want to echo our support to the governor of Virginia. And if it's another governor of Virginia in 2 years, we'll do the same thing, because squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I think the state puts up about 8% of the money on a $400 million project. The local area would put up 2%. You know, we'd ask everyone who's a member of the Port Commission to consider that sometime in the future, before we all move on to another part of our lives. But that airport needs the expansion. That's just one example of what we're talking about. So, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. North. Would someone like to make a motion to authorize the executive?
I'll make
board?
that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you, Mr. Hyde. That carries, and we appreciate the trust you place in the executive board to take care of that. So moving on, got project updates.
I think we've got the order and staff will kind of rotate a little bit through updating each of their sections. But this is just our opportunity as we come to the winding down to the end of the work program period to give you a sense of some of the projects that have wrapped up or close to completion. I always caveat, this is not a comprehensive list of everything the commission's done this year. This is some of the highlights of projects with some major impact and some of our. So I will turn it over to Steph to kind of lead us through.
Floor is yours, Steph.
Well, I can kick us off. So this is an overview of everything that we're gonna talk about, for the operations here. So we'll start with economic development. We have a new, SEDS update, which I believe, the public input for that is closing today. So we've developed a user-friendly online version of the sets, which I hope some of you have had a chance to look at. And then we have worked with several of your locality staff to do grants to support grant applications through that effort, so. We've also done a lot of local assistance projects in general through the ARC funding. I wanted to call some of these out because they're some of our smaller localities. Of course, we can't, Big Castle are not members, but we have worked with towns in Bogota to help support some of your, their projects for economic development, including, Buchanan and Big Castle. We also have worked to support, and actually do most of the heavy lifting on, Brian and Allison, the Clifton Forge Comprehensive Plan update. And then the Craig County Comprehensive Plan update was completed this year, and we are helping draft the Craig County Solar Ordinance. So lots of local technical assistance work that's been very successful this year. In terms of environmental planning, we have, you've heard me speak about the urban tree canopy assessment earlier this year. And then we also have, of course, the Roanoke County Septic Pump Out Pilot Program. That's been a very popular program. We've had 160 applicants and 69 pump outs have been completed. Folks fall off on that program for a variety of reasons. There is an income requirement, among other things, and certain educational things they have to complete to be eligible for their pump out. We also happily are looking to expand that program into Bogota County through a new contract with DEQ under the Chesapeake Bay funding. So we're very excited about that. That's a big success this year. In terms of outdoor recreation, obviously this is a big important part of our regional identity. We've worked on to support the Greenway Commission on some plan mapping, the West Roanoke River Greenway feasibility study. We helped with that effort. The Alleghany Highlands Outdoor Recreation Plan, and then we've also been involved with the Pounding Mill grant, which is it's the same grant funding as the West Roanoke River Greenway feasibility study. So that's a really cool campground site that we might see come to fruition sometime in the next couple of years in Alleghany. And then the Roanoke River Blueway Advisory Committee, which you have heard about, I suspect for some of you ad nauseum. And then we're going to flip over to housing. So here's Brian to talk about all of the successes with housing.
Jeremy talked about wrapping up projects. This is one of those that is, we're happy to say is ongoing, and the fledgling program, our housing development program, started as a result of the $2 million grant that we received from Virginia Housing a few years ago. And as a bit of an update, our 4 partners that we have as a result of solicitations a couple of years ago we intend to yield a total of 77 single and multifamily units throughout the region from a variety of providers. The 2 photos here in this slide were two house dedication or grand openings, if you will, in the last few weeks. Of that 1.35 billion that we've set aside for competitive funding, we've completed 17 units to date with roughly 550,000 leverage funding. And we had shuffled around a bit a reallocation of we had initially proposed some recovery housing funding, and the the temperature of the climate just wasn't right. So we reallocated that to an existing partner that we felt was very, had performed very well, and that was, Restoration Housing. So they received $450,000 for a 15-unit affordable, senior, living, development that they'll be working on in the next year. And, unfortunately, our deadline got extended. All the PDCs got extended to the deadline from 6/30 of this year to 6/30/25, and that was as a result of many things that you can imagine, supply chain issues and a variety of things. So we've got another year to essentially finish and wrap things up. So that's the crux of that program. And as you all know, we're receiving some planning funding from the new Southeast Crescent Regional Commission designation. So we've begun a launch of the immediate launch of that, and our planning funds are designed to, in the interim, to publicize the program a little more. And obviously, some longer term goals are to develop a regional developers roundtable and to eventually things such as providing perhaps low interest loans for first time home buyers, down payment assistance, that sort of thing. Things that clearly were recommended and that we feel that could be of use to our localities in the future. And I'll turn it back over to transportation. I think it's time.
And Brian, can I ask you a question? The second bullet, leverage $500,000 from 1.3 million. Does that mean the rest of the money?
Let's see, we had allocated, and that might, and you, Mr. Clinton, you, I think may have called me on some math here, but I think I believe that could be a little, I think that's a little less. It probably should be 1.65. We did take 10% in our budget for contingency for overhead, that sort of thing. So I apologize. I think that should be 1.6. So that's roughly a third of what is traditionally dedicated toward housing leverage.
Thank you.
My apologies, but thank you.
I just have a quick question. 17 units completed. Are those units all in Roanoke City, or are they spread out through?
They are, yes, the 17 units completed are a combination of the ones in the ones from Restoration Housing and ones from our partners at Habitat for Humanity. So it currently it is just focused, the completed units are in the Belmont target area neighborhood of the city.
Brian, can I ask a question before we move on? These monies, are they available for distribution to developers that are going to be building affordable workforce housing?
They were. What we did a couple of years ago was put out a request for applications, and the 4 partners that you see here are those that responded to and were subsequently awarded. We anticipate a second round from Virginia Housing, although from everything I hear, it's not going to necessarily be as much. I don't know what those numbers are. Again, we applied for and received the full request of 2 million, which for our size and experience level of in housing, which was novice, was 2 million. I don't know what that structure is going to look like, but yes, ideally what we would foresee in a second round would be looking for partners. Again, they can be public partners, they can be private partners who essentially in looking in areas in the region that we did not serve the first round. So we've chatted with some of our existing partners that were interested in perhaps a second round, and I've advised that, again, because we're a regional body and wanting to spread the funding around, that we wanted to look at other localities. Not to say that those localities are now no longer in need. It's just, again, trying to a little more equitably, perhaps.
I just wanted to understand the mechanism because, as I work with developers in my district, if there is a developer building workforce housing / affordable housing, would it be reasonable that as a supervisor and a commission member, that particular developer could have a conversation with us regarding participation?
Absolutely. That
Okay.
would be appropriate. As I've mentioned before, this is, to me, I've worked in a variety of these grants before. This is the first that is not public dollars. So, so the ability to have conversations with specific developers, and although we did go through an RFA process, which is reminiscent of public procurement, it's not required. So as Virginia Housing tells me, it's your program. You can do within the parameters of the program what you'd like to do. So yes, that would be appropriate. And I would be more than happy to chat with folks.
And I would add just real quick to respond to that, Ms. Smith, as you heard Brian mention earlier, our Southeast Crescent money, which covers Franklin County as well as Upper Valley. One of the goals of that is to get for us to talk to developers, understand developers' needs. So the more conversations we have, aligning both with the potential Virginia housing funding, but potentially other funding sources, the better. That sets us up for, not only potentially a second round of Virginia housing, which I will add, at a VAPDC meeting, they mentioned they're continuing those conversations, and it sounds hopeful. As Brian mentioned, probably not the same amount of money, but the rules are likely to be very similar, which is we design the program and some percentage, if not all of that, the resulting project has to be made available for workforce. For housing. There's some rules there, the Virginia housing sets. But, and there may be potential funding through the Southeast Crescent as well as that. So we would really welcome getting in touch with developers. It's not easy. So if someone wants to talk to
Well, I
us, we'd
talk
be
to them all
happy.
the time.
Yeah, we would be happy to start those conversations.
Thank you, Brian.
Sure. Thank you.
Got a follow-up question. Have y'all thought about doing temporary housing?
I'm sorry, I'll jump in real quick. So in this particular round, the rules for there's some rules that came from Virginia Housing that were pretty specific on what kind of housing. So it was adaptive reuse, single family housing, and potential multi-use kind of housing. There have been something, temporary housing, and specifically was not allowed in that particular program. There are some opportunities for experimental, I guess is the right word. Like some communities, I think that things with 3D printed housing, shipping container, those kinds of things as part of that. But ultimately, it needed an owner in that unit, or it needed some kind of a leasing mechanism that guaranteed affordability and some number of units for extra time. And I'm radically summarizing what's a very kind of complicated program that Brian designed. So in this case, there were some limitations. We looked at things like transitory housing and other sorts of things for the needs for the region, but they just didn't qualify under the Virginia housing program. Those rules change next time around, and certainly, will qualify the program.
So we have a population in Roanoke City, Roanoke County that cannot afford market rate apartments. So they end up sleeping in their cars, their vehicles. If they have kids, they farm them out to friends in the neighborhood. So there's a group in Roanoke City that has now expanded into Roanoke County. for volunteers. So it's, housing is housing, whether it's temporary, permanent. You know, they need housing using existing structures. So, yeah.
Adaptive reuse.
Yes, yeah, like these older hotels.
All right, but anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So Brian, I guess I thought I understood this until I heard all these questions. So kind of going back to Steve's question as the basics, this started out, I think you said there was a $2 million grant. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when you were correcting those numbers, they should add up to $2 million, the 450 and
No, I'm sorry, the amount of funding that we made available to our partners was the 1.65. The remainder was, again, overhead contingency, the variety of the other costs associated with running the program. So the 1.65 was then distributed and awarded to the four.
Okay, and when you say leveraging, that means that those other organizations contributed the odd number of 556,871, or how did you leverage those funds?
No, great question. The assumption is that the regional commission is not the only funder. So the total of 556,871 is what we have leveraged to restoration housing and habitat thus far of the 1.35. Now, we are one of many funding partners. For example, with Habitat, they have City of Roanoke funding. They've got a variety of other partners as well as restoration housing. They have several different other funders, and in using restoration housing as an example, the first funds that we provided to them were truly a last mile effort that saved them from going out and raising additional funds to make up a deficit for the property that they were working at the time, which was 920 Stewart Avenue. So really the 20-some odd thousand was last mile. And that's one of the things that Virginia Housing has stressed to us, that great, it's wonderful if you want to just, if you want to help create new units or adaptive reuse units or a variety of the ones that we've talked about, rehabilitating units, but it's one thing to supplement other funds, but if you can have that success moment where we say, and not maybe be modest about it, say, listen, if it weren't for our fund, this would not be a reality. So looking for those projects that might not have the greatest opportunity to succeed or succeed as quickly, having those funds there to leverage with others is our goal. Now, we've partnered with folks that have had plenty of funds, but they obviously are doing quite a bit of impact in certain neighborhoods. So we look at that on a case by case. So it's not that's not a hard and fast rule that we follow, but that's something that Virginia Housing would like us to focus on.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand the use of the word leveraging in this context. What's that 556,000? How is that leveraged?
It is so that the partner doesn't have to come up with that funding, or that they do not have to seek another fund.
So we put in the 556,000?
Yes, again, thus far, we've contributed of the 1.65, we have contributed 556,871 to two projects from restoration housing and a total of which will be a total of 17 units from Habitat for Humanity, in varying different amounts per their need and per the housing.
And I will note what there is, what's another, so that's 77 units. There's a major adaptive reuse project, the Rivermont School in Covington, which is trying to hold elementary school into an apartment complex. That project hasn't even started yet, but that's one of the recipients of this. So part of some of these construction projects took a long time to get ramped up. That's part of the reason Virginia House has delayed. So we've just gotten the money out the door slower, because those projects have started slower, but they're now ramping up. And like, I think the landmark project, I think it was due to start this fall maybe. So, so some of that is just hasn't made out the door yet, but we'll make it out the door maybe the next year before the deadline, next year.
So Brian, is it easy enough just to say that that second bullet, that of the allocation of funding, we've spent the 557K
Yeah.
of the total amount, rather than, I think the leveraging word's getting everybody
Yes.
confused.
That is, you're absolutely correct.
So how much in construction housing projects did that 556,871 investment produce? That would be leveraging. So, that's what I'm not understanding. In other words, we've invested 556,871,
Yes.
and we're not the only funder in these projects. We're enabling other projects to be realized by adding additional funds to other sources of investment, either that they are producing or that they're getting through financing or whatever. So to me, that would, whatever that number was, whatever that 556,871 enabled to happen is how much it's what we leverage. Anyway. I've learned enough. I'll stop.
21 units to the answer to that question. Which one? And the reason, and that differs from the 17 there, because the amounts of, because again, we're in various different stages of completion of the various different units from Habitat. So thus far, it's gone toward the construction of 17 of Habitat units, which are not all complete. There are currently 12. I'm getting the numbers wrong. But again, they're in various different states of completion. So for example, the 17, when completed, the Habitat project was for 17 projects, 17 individual houses, and for a little over $810,000 in total investment. So we are not, we've not completed and
our portion of that investment was 556,000.
no, that's a combination of Habitat and restoration. That's all.
That's good. All right. Sounds like we're doing a good job.
I hope so.
So Brian, who owns these homes? These developers, or are they turned around and sold or rented, or what's the criteria for someone to purchase or live in one of these homes?
With Habitat, it is, it goes through the normal Habitat for Humanity process. They go through a homeowner selection period and process, and then they have, when they approached with their proposal, they had those units listed, and we knew what those addresses were immediately. So they were in process of getting folks through the homeownership program process and vet them that way. Now for others, like I'm not exactly familiar with restoration's process, but they would acquire the unit, rehabilitate the unit, and then through their own qualification process, which has to at least be serving folks that are at 60% of the area median income.
But we didn't just transfer $450,000 to restoration.
No, it's well, we wouldn't do that anyway. no, that's, it's on a reimbursement process, but, based on performance and,
So we allocated from the funds that we have, 450 for that.
yes.
Haven't spent any of it yet.
For that new development now. They're still in the planning process today.
And are these houses sold for cost?
With Habitat, obviously, the clients are not able to afford the market rate, so no, they're able to, there's an absorption of some of that cost but they're still mortgages, but they are at an affordable rate again for their clients that are that qualify.
So
And
no
again, that
profit.
does meet our Virginia Housing's 60%, at least 60% payment.
There's no profit generated in selling these houses.
Well, Habitat takes donations year round. So that's how they
But
generate.
they're selected, it's income
A
based.
lot of their labor, materials are donated.
Any other questions for Mr. Hill? All right, thank you. I guess we'll move on to transportation. Mr. Williams?
Quickly on transportation planning, I reviewed this at the TPO meeting earlier, so it might be a little bit redundant for a few of you. We facilitated the allocation of our sub-allocation programs. See they're listed there. Hopefully those projects will be getting out the door. Smart scale, we actually, the TPO approved funding for these projects in round 6 of Smart Scale, which the application deadline is August 1st, so about a month away. Hopefully, the funding awarded out of our sub-allocation program will make these programs more competitive. Other items in transportation planning, we did the update to the public participation plan. Jonathan continues to monitor the counts, the counters on the greenways and other select locations. We staff the Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee and the other committees listed here. Allison has been working on some technology upgrades so we can more effectively monitor and manage the TIP and the Roanoke Valley Transportation Plan. Believe me, that's not easy. Those are lengthy plans. I'm participating on the City of Roanoke's Thriving Community Steering Committee. That's the committee dealing with a grant the city received to do some work on Williamson Road, public engagement. And then Franklin County joined this year as a non-voting member to the RVTO. We've also engaged in some transportation advocacy. We worked a lot in the fall, trying to get a better understanding with the state's continuous tinkering with smart scale. They don't seem to understand that it's difficult to plan transportation projects when they consistently change the rules. Sorry for that little bit of editorial commentary. There was some legislation during the legislative session that we noticed that would have modified smart scale in a sort of unworkable fashion. We worked with the Virginia Association of Counties to deal with the patron of that bill. To ultimately he withdrew the bill when he realized it wasn't going to work. And then Mr. North, Jeremy, and I sat through a JLARC interview when they released a study earlier in June that Delegate Austin referenced, I believe, during his presentation earlier at the TPO, dealing with opportunities to fund various projects on Interstate 81. And now I'm going to turn the rest of the transportation presentation over to Andrea, who led our efforts on a couple of regional stunts.
Good afternoon. We have talked to you guys about our electric vehicle station deployment study is wrapping up. We're finishing up. And I just wanted to give you a quick glance of what the findings of this report. And again, this report is for your localities to use as support to pursue grants to implement, electric vehicle port stations along your, or in your communities. So, there is an interactive map that at some point now will make available to, I have shared with you at some point will be more available on our website, where you can zoom in on all of these areas, and what you see here highlighted in color are the areas where the plan, based on multiple inputs, recommend that are zones where electrification of those corridors needs to happen to support the growth of electric vehicles in our region. And we did some projections, and as of today, as of this year, there are 42 existing publicly accessible charging ports in the Roanoke Valley. And as of 2023, there was 980 EV vehicle registrations in the Roanoke Valley. If we do absolutely nothing, like nobody really would not move or do anything, the projections indicate that by 2030, there will be at least like 5,700 electric vehicle registrations in our region. That means that we'll need 4 times as many publicly accessible charging ports. So in the realm of 500. And so just to achieve that, that is really at our hands are our localities. We have been talking to Virginia Twin Cities. They have a lot of support and resources for local, for jurisdictions to implement electric vehicle stations. They have a Rural Reimagine program, which actually is primarily like the stations will be free, and the cost that the locality has to incur is an installation and maintenance. So we're working with Allegheny Highlands. They're very interested in this program, but again, we have technical assistance support, and as this plan will be developed, and we will have it available for you and your staff to look at, digest over a website. We encourage you to look on resources to begin moving this direction. Yes, Mr.
Is there a study that indicates what an ideal number or a necessary number of
So we project,
publicly available charge? Because a lot of apartment complexes or county communities, they'll have charging stations, individuals have charging stations in their homes. So I'm just curious, what is that's the total number of vehicles, right?
but 980 is the total electric vehicle registrations in our region
Right.
as of 2023.
So
42 is the number of publicly available.
so how many of those vehicles rely upon a public charging station as opposed to private? Or do we have any sense of? I'm trying to understand, how do we know what the need is? Because that, to me, that doesn't really express the need for public charging.
Well, so once we look into the map tool actually looks into equity, HI communities. So the communities that have lower income minority communities, there's a projection specifically for that. And in this tool, in this map analysis, we looked at primarily the inputs we're looking at is multi-use family housing. So where the apartment complexes are, where attractions such as grocery stores, malls, and also like recreation amenities, etc. So that is the inputs that we're providing in terms of like where the need for public accessible charging stations for a region that is growing, and it has a growing number of tourism and economic development and housing. So yes, there are, and in the plan, there are some indications. I don't have it off the top of my head, but there are some correlations of how so there's people that are able to charge their vehicles at home, but there's not the majority. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I will have to answer that question by reading some of the chapters in the plan. I don't have it off the top of my head. Like specific numbers of how many of this 900
I'm just trying to get a context, because I mean, I don't know how many gas stations there are versus, you know, gas.
Yeah.
Uh,
But this projections, again, business as usual means that we're not doing anything to support or to plan. Really, we just let people buy the electric vehicles and grow and we're not doing anything to support or promote the acquisition of more electric vehicles in the region, right? So that is the projection growth based on what we've been seeing right now. But if communities start thinking about just approaching more targets or like just developing more targets around electrification of the corridors or just promoting the use of electric vehicles in their community. So there's some projections. The high state goal, that's probably way too much for us. Like that's not something, that is something like metropolitan, like really technical or like dense communities are looking at. So that growth is probably not something realistic for us. So I think we'll be more in the business as usual or medium to support the electrification of our corridors.
So Andrea, what data did you use to support that conclusion that it was gonna grow to 10 times over the next 8 years?
Those are projections in the, from, I mean, in the plan that are stated, those are projections that are done through, various, sources from the state and federal government that are showing the growth.
Yeah, that doesn't seem realistic with the current trend. I mean, EV sales are going down and you're saying they're gonna go up by 10. I have a hard time accepting that conclusion.
Okay, well, I'm happy to dig into and give you that answer based on the conclusions of the plan. To me, that was the kind of the most striking conclusion based on what has been developed, but I understand your questions and we can.
It doesn't seem to comport with current marketing trends at all.
So you're saying we have 980 now or in 23?
Yes.
I agree. I don't see in by 30, we would be at 5,700.
I mean, that's like almost a couple for every, I mean.
Exactly. And with, to me, the momentum toward those cars is not going in that direction.
That's a valid.
So that jump, that's what strikes me most of all. And then, so you're saying the medium and the high columns really don't apply to our region.
Yes, yeah, that's.
But even if we stick to where we are, to me, that's a tremendous jump and then in 10 more years to be at 25, that's.
Well, the industry is, is pushing this a lot.
Yeah.
And from the top of the federal government, they're pushing the industry into developing more and making them more affordable.
And you mentioned like promoting it. I just don't see that kind of growth happening in our region of what I see and what you're reading about the industry. But I mean, that's not on you. That's what the data is saying to you, but I don't see that being realistic at all.
But I think, this is this is a different question really, because I don't think we have a clear market driven basis for supplying electric, power to electric vehicles. Because I mean, gas stations open because they're in a business of selling gas. They get their own gas, they sell it to consumers. It's sort of self-determining as to whether or not, how many there are and whether there's enough available, because the individuals are making that investment. It seems to me that what we're talking about is somehow the public taking on responsibility for having these charging stations. It's not clear whether, the electricity is being charged for, how it's, so I don't see a model yet that's been created. And so
They're different, I'll let you, but it's not the public, like there's different models on how this can be achieved. And for the most part, it's usually a partnership and it's usually charged. Like, I mean, they cost money. It costs money to charge. They're not free. Public doesn't mean free.
So
They just mean that anybody can use it. So
Right.
for instance, in this 42 existing publicly accessible charging ports, does not include any of the Tesla charging ports, because those are exclusive for Tesla drivers. Eventually, Tesla will become publicly charging stations, but they're not current. I think they're on that trajectory, but publicly doesn't mean free. And it doesn't mean owned by a government or owned by a locality, but it could be a combination of many different strategies and
So I guess
partnerships.
the real question is, what should we do with this information?
Yeah.
You wanted to say something?
Well, and I just to emphasize, the change here is just to kind of highlight, I'm sure that the study is, this body will receive a more full report when the study is complete and its conclusions. It'll just highlight the numbers, but ultimately, the goal of this was to identify potential markets so localities can understand where there might be some market demand, and that might not come, or most likely won't come from the public, but that you're prepared for when the Sheets or the Wawa comes in and says, we want the infrastructure, the power generation, all those bits to support charging infrastructure, so that maybe where that's likely to come from, what that infrastructure might need to look like. If so, in a lot of our rural communities, for example, the transmission power to support 5 charging stations may not exist. It's different than having a tank under the ground that's holding fuel. So this is ideally providing some data, maps, targets, so that you're aware of potentially what's coming and how to prepare for that. And then to your point, Mr. Osborne, what are some potential models? And I think we're all, the public doesn't own gas stations. The goal is not to make public own charging station, but those requests are going to be coming from the private sector, and there's going to be other needs there, or there might be opportunities for public-private partnerships. If your community says we want a station here to be able to capture tourists or whatnot, how to go about getting the funding or the site to do that with a private partner. So I don't want to overstate, I think those are some numbers that just kind of speak at some potential trends, but there's a lot still coming out of this study and a broader base of conclusions. I think that you all see some point in the future.
And another point I should make, so the state has its own strategic plan to electrify the corridors. In our region, those corridors are 81 and 64. Those are the corridors identified within our region. Their plan is to have public accessible EV charging stations every 50 miles. And they're being very aggressive at this. Last year was the first year they acquired funding, and they learned a lot of lessons of how much does it take. So they're giving it 2 more years to complete their goals of every 50 miles along all the major highways in the country, in the state. Now, they're already identifying that regions are asking for their own priority corridors. And so this plan identifies our priority corridors, right? 220, 311, 419. Because the phase 2 of that funding that's coming from the federal government administered through VDOT will be to electrify the local corridors. And this kind of plan is the leverage to really get that funding. So that's what, when I say, think the projections, they come from a lot of assumptions, but also from a market-based study that this is happening because it's being pushed by the industry.
Yeah, and just looking back historically, this has been the role of the regional commission at different points, is to, we did it with solid waste management needs, and we've done it with water supply needs. And eventually it leads, it supports the localities making their own decisions or doing things regionally in order to address those needs. So I was really just trying to understand what we were supposed to get out of the study, and if you certainly amplified that.
Yes, so
Thank you.
it really is just,
And I heard this
we-
yesterday at a Kiwanis meeting, so I wanted to get a little
you
bit more
got a
information.
little time to like digest it. Yeah, so I think that the idea really is a plan to support. It's just, it is a plan to give you guidance on how to pursue the electrification of your corridors or your regions, et cetera. But we're probably, in terms of funding, right now, there's a lot of rural funding. But in terms of that federal big buckets of funding, we're probably 2 or 3 years out.
What organization sanctioned it? For whom are we doing it?
That was asked to be on our work plan. I believe it's specifically from Roanoke County. Roanoke County asked
Not the federal, there's a federal program.
the federal there is a federal program to support and bring bring money to states to create electrification of
But
the
they
corridor.
haven't given money to the station.
Yes, they have. Virginia, that's the Navy program. It's called the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure.
I mean, I saw where there was like, I guess, $8 billion the federal government had,
Yes,
and I read something that since they've gotten the money, they've only built 8 stations, something similar. I mean, 5 to 8 stations. They've only built 8 charging stations with the $8 billion that they've gotten so far.
that's for Virginia.
No, that was, I don't know how this is, I guess I saw Pete Buttigieg
Okay.
on a show. And they were talking about it, and he said, well, they've only completed 8 charging stations, and that was the whole thing. He said, well, what have you been doing with the $8 billion that we gave you? So,
Yeah, I'm not,
I
but
think-
Virginia does have their own pot of money, and they have been since last year. Basically, they have an application process, and their goal again is to give this money to accomplish every 50 miles along the measure. And
Mr. Hall, just as a quick note on that, one of the preconditions was VDOT needed to complete its alternative fuel corridor plan, and they were late on that, so it took them a little while. So that it was a precondition to get some of that money programmed out to stations. So in Virginia, maybe one of the reasons we haven't seen as much activity is VDOT needed to get that work done, and that was only completed.
That was
Last-
September of last year.
Yeah, so they only completed that plan relatively recently to open up opportunities to actually start accepting projects and funding them. And again, that's only limited to projects along 81 and 64. So one of the goals of something like this was, I think, and Andrea emphasized, to set up funding opportunities outside of that program that was committed to only building out VDOT's basically the support for 81. So anything else in the region doesn't really qualify for a lot of those funding. So the intention is to make us more competitive
Yeah,
for other programs outside.
but as I said, there will be a phase 2 that is already delayed. But when phase 2 kicks off, it will be, here's an application process, it's an application window. You have 4 months to tell us what you want money for. And if we have this plan and we have this resource, hopefully some localities that are interested in pursuing that will have more resources to do so.
Feel like we have the rest stop strategy now. Every 50 miles.
This one hopefully less controversial. This is a program that I started, last year in collaboration with the Friends of Flourish Foundation. And I think I had mentioned it before, they approached us they had a grant that they wanted to allocate towards bicycle infrastructure in our region. And together we developed a bicycle rack donation program. We built the racks and, locally, this were built like really just down the street by, Lift Art Studios, a local owned business. The Friends of Blue Ridge pays for essentially the bill of building the racks. And we distribute them through an application process to localities and community organizations in our region. We started this project last year. Last year, we gave racks to Roanoke City, Roanoke County, Leap, in Roanoke City Public Schools. This year, we tried to really get more of our rural localities in place. So this year, we have recipients from Baratow County, Clinton, Forge, Covington is actually getting 6 racks. And, as you see, city of Roanoke and Roanoke College. So this, they were completed in May and they had been distributed and now they're getting installed. But if you have a location in your community, an attraction, a place where you think they'll benefit from bike parking, let me know, because this program will continue. We'll probably try to target different, just groups every year to try to expand the program, but the localities will always be welcome to participate and get a free ride. Can I get this? Another exciting project we completed this year in Roanoke City. So the Regional Commission participated in the Virginia Walkability Institute through the year of 2023. This was a cohort. The Virginia Walkability Institute is funded through the Virginia Department of Health. And they ask communities to form a cohort of individuals that want, and with the idea to go through an academy to pursue a project that will improve walkability in the community, and it can be anything. So I was participant of the cohort for 2023 along with Roanoke City, the Valley-Alleghany Department of Health, and Carilion. And we worked through this academy. Our goal was to improve the walkability. So is anybody here familiar with the Lansdowne area in Roanoke City?
Yes.
So Lansdowne is the biggest housing community in the city. It's located along Salem Turnpike. That's Salem Turnpike. Across the street from Salem Turnpike. So this is the Lansdowne community right here. Across the street from Salem Turnpike it used to be the Horton Library, but that got transformed into the Invention Center, which is a location that provides services for the community of all kinds. And then just down the road through a sidewalk path, you get to the Melrose Library. A brand new library was completed a couple years ago. And now that area, which used to be the Goodwill headquarters, is gonna become a grocery store and a community center for the Melrose area. So our goal was to improve walkability for that housing community to the Melrose Community Plaza. And all they had to do was cross the street, but they were crossing the street that was really wide. It was still 2 lanes, but really wide that allowed cars to go past and merge and pass each other. No crosswalks, no bus shelters. There was buses, a bus route that goes along the route, but there was no bus shelters. Through this group, we were able to leverage all of our existing projects and our talents, and we developed bus shelters, crosswalk, high visibility crosswalk, rectangular flashing beacon, to essentially just to cross the street, extended a sidewalk. And the Institute was so happy with our performance, they asked us, what else can we do? We have extra money. What else can we do to improve this, to enhance this project? So we come up with this is what is called a quick build tactical urbanism project. So the biggest challenge of crossing this road was how wide it was. And the biggest challenge to control speed is how wide the road is. So through this, what things you see over here, they are separated walks that have delineators stick into it. So essentially, we're providing delineation and separation and creating this. It's like if we were gonna build a curb or a sidewalk, right? But we couldn't build that, that's too expensive. So through this project, we effectively narrow the width of the road and created a space for the community where we can walk. And on top of that, we had a call for artists, and we created a design this design was painted in a day by the community. But so it was a really success story and kind of the gateway for projects like this. Again, Roanoke County, unlike other localities where there's lack of sidewalk, and maybe the idea of a sidewalk is too expensive or, unfeasible. So there are projects like this, quick build, practical urbanism that can achieve, pedestrian safety.
Isn't that the built-in maintenance cost?
In our project, there's no built-in maintenance cost. However, the width of these plazas are wide enough that a sweeper can go through. So a sweeper can, and to be honest, that is the biggest constraint of doing this type of projects. The city has come long ways into accepting this kind of projects. It just requires different type of equipment. It's not really about the equipment that they require to be able to get into this spaces to sweep the road.
So I think Williamson Road is doing a study now.
Yeah, that's what Tori was talking about. And
Okay.
I think that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, one quick thing I just wanted to add, and I appreciate the project updates. You heard a lot at the start of that presentation about the technical support that this body just approved the work program last month, which highlights our big projects, but we always have room consciously in our work program for ongoing technical support requests. Sometimes those are the small, sort of unsung, but often really impactful projects where we help your staff, administrators, whatever, on things that they need, whether that is taking the lead on, such as what, Brian and Allison Stinnett are doing with the Clifton Forge comp plan, or just running some data to help a grant application. We have space in our budget to do that. Those don't make it, they don't always make it to presentation like this. They don't make it to headlines of the work program, but it's a lot of the yeoman-like work that happens here. So I just do that to remind you that sometimes the little things get lost, that service is there to make sure that you and your staff know that if you're coming up against some issues or deadlines, or you don't have a good answer to a question, I can't guarantee we can answer it, but we're certainly, hopefully, the place you can start, so we can help take it from there and provide some guidance or ongoing support. And our staff spend a lot of time fielding phone calls and looking stuff up and helping out your planning staff, economic development staff. So just wanted to take a moment to emphasize that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Holmes. So moving along with our agenda today, next item is the 2024 annual update of the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. And Mr. Holmes, you want to kind of speak to that,
Yes,
please?
thank you, Mr. Chair. This will should be a very quick item. One of the documents, required projects we have to do under our Economic Development Administration partnership plan is the creation and maintenance of the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. A lot of acronyms built into everything I just said. One of the goals of this document is to set some project lists and just general strategies for what we as a region want out of our economic development efforts, and that's often a precursor for accessing other EDA funds. So often something needs to be in the SEDS before a locality or other partner. What this update represents, we'd have to do an annual update. We look at minor data changes and updates to our project list. So since the last time this group saw that, I think the only projects we added were a couple in Fincastle. The SEDS committee reviewed the update at their last meeting and recommended approval. There's no substantial changes to the last time. If you've read the 100+ page document, it largely looks like it did the last time you read it. We will be undertaking a significant 5-year update next year, and hopefully the product that comes out of that will look significantly different from what you've seen in the past. But for right now, all this represents is our annual update. No major changes, a couple of project additions, just setting us up for the major revision next year.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. So I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy?
Not had any sign. Sure.
So we'll close the public hearing. That will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution approving the plan.
Move the resolution on page 24.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you. That motion passes. Okay. So moving on, some brief staff highlights today. So I guess first up will be Joe. So over here today.
Joe is, I think, out sick today. Joe is not here.
Sherry.
I think I'm just supposed to tell you who I am and all that kind of stuff. That's what Jeremy said anyways. So, I'm the finance director for the commission. I have been here 8 years as of this coming July 16th. I'm responsible for, all your accounting, your financials, your audits, monitoring grants, contracts and agreements, payroll, benefits administration, and I also, and budgets, many budgets. And I also do, the financials, accounting and audit for the Western Virginia Regional Industrial Facility Authority. That's about it. That's what I think I'm supposed to do.
All right, thank you, Sherry. Next up, Brian.
We appreciate you, Sharon. Thank you.
And live without.
All right, none of this is my first time up here today, but, I'm Brian Hill. I've been with the commission for 11 years. I enjoy long walks up, wrong presentation. I'm a senior planner, and I tell folks, in the nicest, non, wily or crazy way that I'm sort of split in half. I do have community development work and have transportation work, and in the coming months and years, I think the movement will be a little more toward the community development side. But I do, as has been mentioned a couple of times, work with localities on comprehensive planning, a variety of technical assistance, demographic work. The housing development program has been something I've been working on for the last couple of years, and we're growing. On the transportation side, I do a lot of planning and programming, project coordination with various state and federal agencies and with localities. Specifically, you'll see me connected with Smart Scale grant assistance and writing them for and working with localities on their behalf, or in regard to the this body or the RPTPO, or if we've had some instances where I work with Benton and Covington to actually work on their applications, the ones that they submit on their behalf. So a variety of different assistance that way. And again, just as Jeremy said, we've got general technical assistance, so a variety of projects as they come up and are needed.
Thank you, Brian. We'll let you stay up there and just move right into your Blue Ridge Interagency Council report.
That's right. Okay. From earlier this month, the June 14th meeting of the FRIC, it's one of the more pleasant, I guess, acronyms for things, is we met, we said goodbye to our longstanding chair, Paula Prince. She's retiring from her academic position and at Bradford Carilion, and also stepping off of the board there. So we chose as a interim chair Lee Clark with the rescue mission, and he has stressed that will be interim. We will see what that yields. But really, we started an initiative, myself and folks with the continuum care, with the city of Roanoke and with Council of Community Services to look at the outdated governance document charter that is in great need of revision. So we're looking to develop a unified document that has your traditional bylaws and regulations, as well as some governance and things that will guide the consortium of not so public agencies that make up the continuum of care. So we're looking to have that done in the next couple of months, and we sought approval of the proposed structure. So we'll stay tuned on that. So that's all I've got for Rick.
Thank you, Brian. I think the only other report we have today is from Ms. McGee that pertains to the Roanoke River Blueway Advisory Committee. So if you'd like to tell us.
We actually don't have a report from that committee.
All right.
We're great.
Great news, thank you. So moving on to other business, any other business that anyone wants to bring before the committee today? All right, hearing none, any comments from commission members and or the public today?
Do we have a date for our August meeting?
Yeah, that's right, what is the baseball game?
I think we should have a date sent out for the baseball. We will not, usually do not have an August commission meeting because we hold the baseball game. We have confirmed the date with Salem. I'm not sure if Virginia got to save the date out to the board or not, but I will verify with that.
I think something might have been similar.
Yes, it's the 21st.
Okay.
So August 21st,
Yes.
Salem Red Sox.
Thank you. Move we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
This meeting is adjourned.